I grew up in a town where everyone knew everyone, and nothing stayed a secret for long. A place where your last name carried weight, where Sunday church attendance wasn't optional, and where a girl's worth was still measured by how quietly she obeyed. My parents were well known and deeply respected, devout, traditional, and unbending in their beliefs. My father was a deacon at our church, my mother a tireless volunteer. On the outside, we were the picture-perfect family. On the inside, it felt like I was suffocating. From a young age, I was taught that obedience was everything. My opinions were attitude, my dreams were distractions, and my emotions were drama. But inside, I was restless. I wanted more than our sleepy little town could offer. I dreamed of going to college far away, studying journalism or psychology, something that let me understand the world and tell stories that mattered. I wanted a life with meaning, with freedom, with love that didn't come with rules and consequences. But love was complicated in a house like mine. Especially when it didn't come wrapped in the package my parents expected. I kept my heart guarded, but even so, I met someone I never planned to fall for. He wasn't from our town. He didn't go to our church. He didn't have the pedigree or the polish, but he had something I'd never known before, gentleness without judgment. He listened when I spoke. He saw me. We kept it a secret. We had to. I knew what my parents would say, that I was throwing away my future, that he was using me, that I was inviting shame into our home. So I said nothing. I smiled at the dinner table. I wore the dresses my mother picked out. I studied hard. I pretended. And all the while, I lived for the hours I could sneak away and just be me. But secrets have a way of catching up to you. And mine came crashing down faster than I ever imagined. I didn't know that one choice would erase his name was Malik. We met at the community library where I volunteered on weekends. He wasn't from our town. He'd recently moved in with his aunt after his mom passed away. He was a couple of years older than me, working 2 jobs and taking night classes at the community college. There was a quiet strength about him, not just in how he carried himself, but in how he treated people, with patience, humility, and grace. He was everything my parents warned me against. Malik was black, from a working-class family, and didn't belong to our church, or any church, as far as they knew. But more than that, he didn't play by the social rules my parents lived by. He didn't care about who you were related to or what you wore to Sunday service. He cared about who you were beneath it all. At first, it was just friendship. We'd talk about books and music, laugh over coffee at the corner cafe. But feelings have a way of creeping in where they're not supposed to. Before long, I was smiling at my phone during dinner and finding excuses to spend more time at the library. With Malik, I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to shrink myself to make room for someone else's pride. He made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. Our love grew in whispers and shadows. We both knew what would happen if my parents found out. In their world, someone like Malik didn't belong in our lives. To them, love wasn't about the heart, it was about heritage, appearances, and control. So we hid. We cherished stolen moments. We talked about a future where we didn't have to hide, a little apartment in the city, late-night talks under cheap string lights, building a life on our own terms. But life doesn't always wait for the perfect time. I was careful. We both were. But sometimes, even precautions aren't enough. I still remember the moment I realized, sitting in the bathroom, staring at that tiny plus sign on the test. My hands shook. My heart raced. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I was only 19. I told Malik that night. I expected fear, maybe even disappointment. But he just pulled me into his arms and whispered, "We'll figure this out. I'm not going anywhere." He promised to stand by me, no matter what. He talked about saving more money, finding a better place, and supporting me through school. He didn't flinch. He didn't run. But I knew what was coming. I couldn't keep it a secret forever. My body would change. My parents would notice. The town would talk. And Malik, they'd never accept him. But it wasn't just about me anymore. I had a life growing inside me for a moment. After I told them, there was nothing but stillness. My mother's fork hovered halfway to her mouth. My father sat frozen, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might shatter his teeth. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall behind them. It felt like time itself was holding its breath. Then the storm came. My father slammed his hand on the table so hard the plates rattled. "What did you say?" "I'm pregnant," I repeated, quieter this time. My voice trembled, but I didn't look away. My mother stood slowly, her face pale with horror. "With who?" she demanded. "Who did this to you?" I hesitated, and that silence gave me away. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not that boy. That outsider. His name is Malik," I said, gently. "And he didn't do anything to me. We love each other." My father stood too, towering over me. "You've brought shame to this family. You've thrown your future away for some boy you barely know. You think love justifies this disgrace. It's not disgrace. Don't talk back to me." His voice cracked like a whip. "We raised you better than this. Or so we thought. Clearly, we failed." My mother folded her arms, her face stone cold. "You've embarrassed us in front of this entire town. What will people think when they find out our daughter is playing house with someone like him? Do you even understand what you've done?" I wanted to shout, to scream that this wasn't the end of the world. That love wasn't a sin. That being pregnant didn't mean I was broken. But I was too stunned, too raw. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "I'm still your daughter," I whispered. "I need you. Please, just talk to me." "You made your choice," my father said, his voice now disturbingly calm. "So live with it." They gave me 10 minutes. A tiny heartbeat that deserved truth, safety, and love. So one evening, I sat across from my parents at the dinner table, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked into their eyes, the same eyes that had watched me take my first steps, the same eyes that used to tuck me into bed, and I told them the truth. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was louder than any scream I'd ever known. 10 minutes to grab my purse and coat, to stumble out the front door without so much as a goodbye. My room, the one with the pictures on the wall and the stuffed bear on the shelf, was now forbidden ground. My mother followed me to the porch but wouldn't look me in the eyes. She just stood there as I stepped into the cold night. I stood in the rain outside my own home, not even allowed to pack my things. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have savings. I didn't have friends I could call that late. My phone trembled in my hand as I pulled up Malik's number. My heart ached with shame, not because of him, but because I was bringing this chaos into his life. He answered on the first ring. "Are you okay?" "They kicked me out," I choked, finally letting the tears fall. "I don't have anywhere to go." "Where are you?" "I'm coming to get you." And he did. 10 minutes later, Malik pulled up in his beat-up sedan and wrapped me in the warmest hug I'd ever felt. He didn't ask questions. He didn't get angry. He just held me like I wasn't a burden. Like I was home. He brought me to the small one-bedroom apartment he shared with his cousin, who gave me the bed without hesitation and took the couch. That night, I laid awake, the weight of everything sinking in. I had nothing. No clothes beyond what I wore. No money. No security. But I had him. And I had the tiny life growing inside me. That was the beginning. The beginning of nights crying quietly into his chest. Of part-time jobs and food stamps. Of learning how to survive without the safety net I'd always taken for granted. It was also the beginning of a different kind of strength, one built from pain, but held together with love. I had lost my home. But I hadn't lost myself. The apartment Malik and I moved into barely deserved the name. It was more of a box with peeling wallpaper and creaky floors, but to us, it was a start. One bedroom, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom that leaked every time it rained. The heater rattled like it was gasping for air, and the windows let in more cold than light. But it was ours. For the first time, we had something to call our own. Malik picked up a second job, working nights at a warehouse after long shifts at the auto shop. I found a part-time position doing customer service from home and enrolled in online classes whenever I could afford them. Most days, I was too exhausted to think straight. My feet ached, my back throbbed, and morning sickness made even crackers unbearable. But I pushed through it, one long day after another. We had little and lost much. My phone never lit up with messages from my family. Old friends drifted away or avoided me entirely, some out of awkwardness, others out of judgment. The girl who once led school assemblies and won community awards had now become a cautionary tale. We survived on instant noodles, second-hand baby clothes, and hope. Hope that someday things would be different. But there were moments, quiet ones, that made the struggle worth it. Like when Malik would come home at midnight, kiss my forehead gently, and whisper, "We're going to be okay." Or when we'd sit on our lumpy mattress, his hand resting on my belly, waiting for those magical little kicks. The first time we felt one, we both burst into tears, laughing and crying at the same time like two kids trying to play adults. Sometimes, we'd dream out loud. Talk about painting the baby's room yellow, taking weekend trips to the coast, or saving up for a small house. We didn't know how we'd get there, but we believed we would. Together. One night, after a particularly rough day of Braxton Hicks contractions and anxiety attacks, Malik came home holding a small box. I was sitting on the couch, swollen feet propped on a pillow, wrapped in a blanket that had belonged to his mother. He knelt down in front of me, opened the box, and inside was a ring made from twisted copper wire with a tiny blue glass bead in the center. "I can't afford a diamond. I can't even afford a proper meal tonight," he said, voice cracking. "But I can promise you forever. I can promise to never leave you, to raise this child with you, and to love you more every day." Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. "Yes," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Of course, yes." The months dragged on, each day a small war against fatigue, doubt, and fear. We skipped baby showers and maternity photos. We didn't have the luxury of birth plans or prenatal yoga. My checkups were sparse because we couldn't always afford transportation or copays. But Malik never let me feel like I was alone in it. He was there, every heartbeat, every sob, every hope. And then, one stormy night, the contractions started for real. We didn't even have a car of our own. Malik called in every favor he could, and a neighbor drove us to the hospital through rain-slicked streets. The pain came in waves, relentless and terrifying. I screamed, cried, held Malik's hand so tightly I thought I'd break it. Hours passed in a blur of nurses, monitors, and agony. And then, just as the sun broke through the clouds outside, he arrived. Our son. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Perfect. Pink. Alive. When they placed him on my chest, all the noise faded. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine like he already knew me, like he was telling me I had done something right. Malik stood beside us, silent tears running down his cheeks. "He's beautiful," he whispered. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. We didn't have much, but we had love. We had each other. And now, we had him. From the moment I held my son, I knew my life had changed forever. I named him Isaiah, meaning God is salvation. He had a head full of soft curls, curious eyes that seemed to study the world with wisdom far beyond his days, and the kind of laugh that could light up the darkest corners of our tiny apartment. Isaiah became my world. Every diaper change, every midnight feeding, every lullaby whispered into the night, I embraced it all. When I was tired, he gave me purpose. When I doubted myself, he reminded me why I had to keep going. He was the light that had emerged from the wreckage of my old life. Even as a toddler, he was different, alert, empathetic, always observing. By the time he was 2, he could sing whole songs with perfect pitch. We didn't have much, but we filled our home with music. Malik saved up for a tiny keyboard from a thrift store, and Isaiah would press the keys with wonder, creating simple melodies that made our hearts swell. By the time he was 5, it was clear he was gifted. His teachers called him a joy to teach. He read well above his grade level, asked thoughtful questions, and had a memory like a sponge. More importantly, he was kind. Always offering his snacks to classmates who had none, helping other kids tie their shoes, comforting a friend who cried. He had Malik's gentleness and my determination, all wrapped into one small, miraculous boy. I documented everything. I kept photo albums, journaled each milestone, and wrote him letters every birthday, telling him who he was becoming, and how proud we were of him. I wanted him to know the truth of his beginnings, but also the beauty of his journey. He wouldn't grow up ashamed, he would grow up cherished. Life was still hard, but it was ours. Malik, true to his word, never stopped pushing. After years of saving and hustling, he opened a small auto repair shop with a friend from school. It wasn't much at first, just a garage with barely enough tools, but it was his. Over time, word spread about his honesty and skill. Business picked up. We started to breathe a little easier. We moved into a modest 2-bedroom house, small, but with a backyard where Isaiah could play. We hung string lights on the porch, planted flowers by the steps, and built a life of our own making. We had no fancy name, no approval from the world we'd left behind. But we had laughter in our hallways, bedtime stories, and piano recitals in the living room. We had scraped and sacrificed, yes, but we had built something beautiful in its place. A little family. Full of love. Full of light. Time moved quickly, as it often does when your days are filled with purpose. Diapers turned into backpacks, lullabies became homework help, and part-time jobs evolved into long evenings at my laptop chasing a future I once thought I'd lost. After years of juggling motherhood, work, and late-night study sessions, I finally earned my degree in communications. It wasn't from a prestigious university, but it was mine, proof that I had kept going when everything told me to stop. That degree opened the door to a fully remote job with a growing nonprofit, where I managed digital content and helped tell stories of resilience. It felt right, using my voice to amplify others. But the real turning point came when I started a blog during Isaiah's nap times. I called it Rising with Baby, a raw and honest space where I shared my journey, from being kicked out pregnant and alone to building a life from scratch. I wrote about postpartum depression, shame, healing, and the little triumphs, making rent, finishing a course, watching my son walk for the first time. To my surprise, the blog took off. Other young moms saw themselves in my story. Some reached out to thank me. Others just quietly followed, feeling less alone. Within a year, I had a modest but growing following on social media. I started sharing resources, tips for affordable childcare, even motivational videos for moms just trying to get through another day. Local organizations took notice. I was invited to speak at a women's shelter first, then a local high school, and eventually at a regional women's conference. Standing on that stage, looking out at girls who reminded me of myself, I felt powerful, not because of where I had come from, but because of who I had chosen to become. And Isaiah, he bloomed. He won a statewide academic competition at age 11 for his essay on Courage in the Face of Adversity. His words moved people to tears. The essay ended with a line about me: "My mother is my hero because she taught me that strength doesn't come from what you have, it comes from what you do when you have nothing." I wept when I read it. He was later awarded a scholarship to a prestigious private middle school, something I never imagined possible. Watching him walk onto that campus in his crisp uniform, holding his favorite book under one arm, I felt a swelling pride no words could contain. We were thriving. Truly. Our little home now had shelves full of books, family pictures lining the walls, and the sound of piano keys echoing through the evenings. My partner's business was growing. My work was meaningful. My voice, once silenced by shame, was now lifting others up. And yet, there was still a quiet ache. Some nights, when the house was silent and Isaiah was asleep, I found myself wondering what it would have been like if my parents had chosen love instead of pride. I missed them, not for who they were, but for who I hoped they could have been. Still, I learned to carry that ache with grace. Because in losing them, I found myself, and built something stronger than anyone expected. It was a bright Saturday afternoon when Isaiah's school held its annual Community Talent and Achievement Showcase, a celebration of the students' hard work and creativity. Parents, teachers, local business owners, and neighbors filled the decorated gymnasium, chatting over refreshments and applauding each performance. Isaiah had been selected to perform a piano piece he'd composed himself. I sat in the front row, camera in hand, pride swelling in my chest. Malik stood beside me, beaming. Our son walked onto the stage in a crisp white shirt and slacks, taller than most of the other kids his age, and bowed confidently before sitting at the piano. The first notes echoed through the hall, soft and full of emotion. You could hear a pin drop. I was so focused on Isaiah that I didn't notice who had slipped in toward the back of the room. Not until the end, when thunderous applause rang out and Isaiah stood to bow again. That's when I turned, and saw them. My parents. Older now, my father with streaks of gray in his neatly combed hair, my mother's face more drawn than I remembered. They were standing near the doorway, dressed formally, like they had just come from church or another event nearby. I later learned they'd been invited by a family friend on the school board, not knowing anything about who they might see. At first, they didn't recognize me. I stood taller now, dressed in a sleek blazer and jeans, my once wild curls styled, my posture strong. I was no longer the crying girl on their porch, but a woman who had built her life with her own hands. But then their eyes shifted, from me to Isaiah, who had just walked off stage, flushed with excitement. Their faces changed. I saw it all in a single breath, the flicker of recognition, the narrowing of their eyes, the confusion, and then the full weight of realization. My father's hand dropped from his chest like it suddenly weighed too much. My mother's lips parted, trembling. They had missed everything, his first steps, his first words, his first song. And now, here he was, a confident, talented boy who carried pieces of both of them in his smile and his eyes. They froze. And I stood tall, watching them see what they had thrown away, and what I had become despite it. After Isaiah's performance, the principal took the stage and cleared her throat, holding a plaque in her hand. This year, we are proud to honor one of our brightest students, not only for his academic excellence, but for his leadership, kindness, and character, she said, smiling directly at Isaiah. Isaiah Thompson, will you please come forward? The crowd erupted in applause. Isaiah stood tall, adjusting the collar of his shirt as he walked up to the stage. He looked so poised, so full of light, that it took my breath away. When he accepted the award, he was handed the microphone. He glanced at the crowd and then back at us, me, Malik, and unknowingly, his grandparents standing in the back. "I just want to thank my parents," he said, voice clear and unwavering. "My mom, especially. She's my best friend and my biggest inspiration. Everything I am, everything I hope to be, it started with her strength." There were tears in my eyes. I wasn't alone. Many people in the audience dabbed at their cheeks, moved by the sincerity of his words. But none more visibly than my mother. She had made her way forward during the applause and now stood just a few feet away, trembling. My father followed, slower, uncertain, but clearly shaken. And then, just as Isaiah descended the steps from the stage, they did the unthinkable. They dropped to their knees. Right there in front of him. In front of me. In front of everyone. My mother was crying, loud, broken sobs, her hands clasped as if in prayer. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. I didn't know. I didn't know what we were giving up." My father didn't speak, but his eyes were glossy, his lips trembling. He looked at Isaiah like he was seeing a miracle. Isaiah stood frozen, confused. I stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his back. "They're your grandparents," I said softly. "The ones who never met you." He looked at them, then back at me. "Are they okay?" "They're just realizing what they missed." My mother reached out, not expecting anything in return. "Please forgive us," she whispered. "We were wrong. We were so wrong." And for the first time in years, I saw not the judgmental faces of my past, but two broken people begging for grace from the very life they had once cast aside. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air long after my parents dropped to their knees. My heart ached, not just for the years lost, but for the fragile thread of hope now stretching before me. Isaiah's innocent question broke the silence. "Mom, are they really my grandparents?" I looked down at him, the boy who had carried us both through every storm, and nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetheart. They are." A rush of emotions flooded me, anger, grief, but also a cautious flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. I wasn't ready to erase the past. I couldn't pretend the pain and rejection hadn't carved deep scars. But for Isaiah's sake, I knew I had to try. Not for them, no, but for my son. So I set the rules, boundaries to protect us, steps to rebuild trust slowly. No rushing. No pretending everything was perfect overnight. They needed to show up, to listen, and to respect what we had built. At first, it was awkward visits and tentative phone calls. But each time Isaiah's bright smile met their tentative greetings, a small part of my heart softened. This was not about forgetting what happened, it was about choosing a different future. They threw me out for having him. For years, they refused to see us. But Isaiah, my son, became the reason they wanted back in. And in that, I found strength. Not just to forgive them, but to reclaim my story, to write a new chapter filled with healing, hope, and love. Because sometimes, the hardest journeys lead to the most unexpected beginnings.